Welcome to Drilling into Crypto. I'm your host, Mohamed Masri. Every week I speak to the leaders that are driving the global financial revolution. Drilling into Crypto puts the spotlight on the importance of crypto assets, on energy markets, and on global monetary policy. Well, here we are with Alexis Pappas. Alexis is the co-founder and executive director of the Canadian Blockchain Association for Women. Alexis, thank you for joining me on this episode of Drilling into Crypto. Very honored and pleased to have met you. Such an amazing energy comes out of speaking with you, and a lot of interesting perspectives when it comes to blockchain, energy, and the ESG narrative around that. I'd like to start off by allowing you to give us a brief introduction about yourself and, where you started off and how you ventured into the world of blockchain and cryptocurrencies.
Thank you so much, Mohamed. I'm so excited to be here with you today. I absolutely love your podcast. One of my fellow board members, Janine Moore, was one of your recent guests. So she got me all excited about being on here. Like my journey into blockchain, like a lot of people, was very convoluted and from a completely different industry. I've got a pretty varied background. I've started e-commerce businesses. I've been in commercial real estate. And I've been actually a travel journalist, which was probably one of the more fun iterations of my career history. But I've always had a huge passion for technology. I grew up as a very kind of nerdy science fiction loving kid. And nothing captivated me more than the future and what it was going to look like and all the different paths that we could take and the role that technology, especially automation, plays in building that future and one that we will hopefully be a lot better. So when I was living in Toronto, I started getting really involved in the mining industry and doing some investment. And the technology side of that was really interesting to me. And from there, I branched out into doing consulting for a number of technology companies, including in hydrogen. And it just became a complete passion of mine. So I moved to Alberta about 4 years ago, and I was at the time working with a couple of different oil and gas related technologies. And one of them generated a very large amount of extremely pure methane from flare gas. And a lot of it was stranded, which is a common problem here in Alberta. So I was trying to think of, what the highest and best use would be, for these stranded gas assets. And Bitcoin mining was kind of the obvious solution. So that was my first entry point into blockchain, working on a project to develop mobile data centers for Bitcoin mining for stranded gas assets. And at the time, this was kind of during the bear cycle of Bitcoin. It was a couple of years ago. And it wasn't good market timing, but it got me really interested in the technology. And from there, I started working on a number of different enterprise blockchain applications, just getting really involved in the ecosystem. And I personally, believed that this was going to be a massive part of the way we manage data going forward, and a huge part of how industries were going to be automated in terms of their data processes. So that's sort of my story and how I got involved in the industry. And it was hard not to notice at all of the different blockchain and Bitcoin conferences that I went to that there was very rarely a lineup for the women's restroom. So a number of different women and we all got together and we decided to create an organization to help support women and help them understand some of the opportunities in the industry. And so that's the Canadian Blockchain Association for Women, which I now lead. And also in the ecosystem, I'm the Director of Industry Digitalization for the Canadian Blockchain Consortium. So I work with a lot of diverse industries, including the energy sector, to help them understand the role that blockchain can play in their evolution and their work towards net zero goals in the future. So yeah, very active in the ecosystem. I just love the community, and it's so exciting to be part of a technology industry that I know is going to play a really big role in our society going forward.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And how did that play out when you set up the Canadian Blockchain Association for Women? What kind of feedback have you had? how many how many women or members of the associations have you grown to? Tell us more about the Canadian Blockchain Association for Women and what it's been doing and who's involved.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have just an incredible board of leaders in our industry here in Canada. Janine Moore of Deloitte, who was on your recent podcast, is one of them. Another one of our founding board members is Kalea Carrington, who's the executive director of the Canadian Blockchain Consortium. We've got Pamela Draper, who is the CEO of Bitvo and leader in a number of different payment solutions, as well as exchange companies here in Canada. We have Louisa Bai, who is a blockchain expert. She just moved to Stellar, and yeah, just an amazing group of women. Our membership, I don't know the exact numbers right now, but it's a few hundred. And we have just tremendous feedback from the community. And one of the things that I think has surprised all of us is the amount of support that we have from men. Men who are established in the industry are some of our biggest advocates and allies. We're so grateful for their support. And I love seeing all of these companies in our Canadian industry making a huge effort to be inclusive. This is something that I've seen a big shift in the last couple of years. So in terms of our activities and what we do, we recently hosted an event called Women in the New Economy. And this was designed to bring in industry leaders to show women who might not be in the industry but are interested some of the opportunities that are available to them. Because much like myself, who doesn't come from a technical background, there are so many different transferable skills that women have in all kinds of different industries that can translate into things that the blockchain industry really needs. Some of these are soft skills in terms of, management and business development and marketing. And these are things where technology companies don't always tend to lead with those skill sets. And that's something that, is really beneficial to them. And we also highlighted through our keynote speaker, Laurie Stein, who's one of Canada's top cryptocurrency lawyers, how a specialization in blockchain, even if you're in another industry, can really help accelerate your career. And this was something that Laurie found when she specialized in cryptocurrency, really set her apart from other people in her industry and made her, a national leader in that specialization. So one of the things we did at this event is we raised a significant number of money, thanks to our corporate sponsors, for grants for women who are currently pursuing blockchain education. And we're going to be announcing those in the next couple of months. So that's really exciting. And then apart from that, we do a lot of advocacy work. We do some public policy, a lot of thought leadership and different events. It's slowed down a little bit because of COVID, but we're getting back into the swing of things and starting to do a lot more virtual events. So it's really exciting.
Amazing. And you've been actively involved in the blockchain adoption within the industrial sectors, untapped market for energy resources and oil and gas companies of all sizes that could benefit from this technology. How have you been? I heard you did mention that you were working with an oil and gas company. There has been a lot of advancement since 2 years ago, and the industry has seen a major inflow of oil and gas companies that are inquiring, and some of them just even curious about how to optimize their energy resources to have more efficient energy production, have a net benefit to the communities around those areas where this energy is being produced. Tell us more about your experience within that part of the world, and how, as a woman, um, you know, you've been shedding your expertise and leadership within that industry, which is really nascent at this stage, but also industrial, right? And has a lot of this convoluted bureaucracies and frameworks and administrative burdens. So tell us more about that and where you see this going.
Absolutely. I mean, I'll address your point about being a woman in two very male-dominated industries, and The one thing I would say is that, and I've experienced this with a lot of women that I've worked with, is that women bring a really unique perspective.
Yeah.
When the women who are involved in things like energy, the energy industry or the technology industry, they're bringing such a strong ESG focus to everything they do. They're incredibly values driven, and they're able to break out of these, really kind of stagnant paradigms that these industries, especially resource industries like energy, have a tendency to fall into. So, women are change agents, they're drivers of innovation. I'm extremely excited to be one of them and get to work with so many amazing women like Rebecca Hoffman, who's the executive director of the Blockchain for Energy Consortium down in Houston. It's just amazing to be around, these very inspiring women in the industry. So, yeah, and then in terms of adoption, I would say blockchain adoption has been extremely challenging. According to Gartner, we're kind of just coming out of what he calls, like they call the trough of disillusionment. Where there was all this excitement and all this hype about how blockchain was going to be the solution to every single problem, and it was going to be the key to Industry 4.0 and all these big transformations that all these industries are aspiring to. And I still believe, in large part that, it is a really critical technology for the realization of a lot of the changes that the industry needs. But adoption is challenged because it involves the replacement of these absolutely massive existing systems. It requires a lot of trust and faith in the technology, and it requires a lot of redundancy where you've got parallel legacy systems and new blockchain systems operating sometimes for compliance reasons, other times just for the safety of organizational processes. So it's challenging. I don't believe that industries are putting enough money into it. I think when you compare blockchain to something like AI, there's been a lot more investment, and there's also been a lot more risk taking. And I think that that needs to change for widespread blockchain adoption to take place. But I think ESG is kind of a lever for the adoption of blockchain. It's no longer enough that companies say that they're working towards net zero, or they make claims about their environmental status. They need to prove it. There needs to be trust in that data, and blockchain is, I think, the ultimate solution for consolidating all of these thousands of disparate pieces of information that are required to understand something like the carbon status of a barrel of oil, turn it into something that can then be monetized, create a market in which that aggregated data, consolidated into a token, can be traded. And I think that that's the future of the industry. And that's the real power of blockchain. It's a force for the automation of so many different processes, which are currently require the manual verification of data. And then it takes that automated chain of verified information, and it turns it into something of value. And that's what I see in the energy industry going forward. And there's a tremendous amount of interest in being able to do that. First because it certainly cuts a lot of big operational costs. It removes a lot of potential for human error. It allows companies to build trust, and then it allows for the creation of a market built on that trust. And I think that's just really exciting.
That's really amazing. And the way you've described it is the first time I hear someone describe it in that manner and in such a simplistic form. But what really interested me in what you just said is taking this carbon data from production sites, whether it's oil and gas or gas, and then tokenizing the data coming out of oil and gas campaigns or any energy production site, then monetizing that data by having that token being traded on a cryptocurrency exchange or a dedicated platform, whatever the case may be. Where's the value derived for this token? And why would people trade it? You and I could probably agree on the value of tokenization, but where do you see the value of a specific token that captures carbon data, for example?
And that's a really interesting question because I think,